Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are live on YouTube.
Right. Hello, everyone. Hello, today is the 11th day of January in the year 2021. I'm Mayor Densmore, and this is a meeting of the Gulf Manor Village Council. We're meeting remotely by the authority granted us by the Ohio Legislature, given concerns about the COVID-19 pandemic. If you will stand as you are able and join me in getting our meeting started in our usual way with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Happy New Year, everyone. Let's start with a roll call to establish for the record that we have a quorum to proceed before we reestablish our rules for this new year of council. Mr. Lanzer, will you do the honors?
Sure. Mr. Betcher.
Here.
Ms. Chaney.
Here.
Mr. Knipp.
Here.
Mr. Pridnoff. Not present. Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Van Harn.
Here.
All members present except for Mr. Pridnoff.
Do we have a motion to excuse Mr. Pridnoff?
Motion to excuse.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Without objection, I will take that as unanimous. Okay. Do we have a motion for the adoption of Robert's Rules of Order for our 2021 year of council?
Make a motion to adopt Robert's Rules of Order as amended by council for 2021. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Without objection, we'll record that as unanimous. Presuming council has had an opportunity to review tonight's agenda, do we have a motion to accept or amend and accept tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, without objection, I'll take that as unanimous. Mr. Lanzer, are there any registered persons to address council this evening?
There is no one registered to address council this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Lanzer. Okay, then presuming council has had an opportunity to review the prepared minutes of our previous council meeting, do we have a motion to accept or amend and accept the December 14th, 2020 minutes?
Mayor, if I could make a note, I sent a note over to Mr. Lanzer on the minutes where we make a motion to read by title only. I'd asked him to add a sentence to confirm that we did read the legislation by title only. So he is adding that into those minutes.
Very good. As amended. Is there a motion or any other amendments?
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Without objection, I will take that as unanimous. Let's see. And I'll ask District Fire Chief Timmers for his report.
Mr. Mayor, I don't see
Timmers
Chief
here?
Timmers with us.
Okay. The report was available to all the council members. I contacted Chief Timmers today. He did not mention that he wouldn't be with us this evening, but I had a question which he answered for me via email about the breakdown of Gulf Manor and Columbia Township runs for our station 47. I had previously asked for that breakdown and did not see it in the report that was uploaded. And he said that what was in the report was just the Gulf Manor runs. All right. He said that there were 17 additional runs to Columbia Township. And in future reports that will be broken down, that we'll see those two separate numbers. With that, I will go on to our mayor's report. Want to start off by acknowledging the events that took place in the U.S. Capitol last week. My family and I were busy celebrating the last day of Christmas, Three Kings Day or Epiphany in our faith tradition. So we weren't on social media or otherwise watching any live TV. In fact, consequently, didn't learn of the outside events that day until the kids were in bed. While we were outside playing with the kids, one of our neighbors did walk by and mention all the chaos in Washington, and we just presumed they were talking about the normal everyday chaos of Washington these days. I mention all that to note that for better or worse, we weren't as traumatized as many people were who were watching the events unfold live. We were disturbed by it, as anyone would be who recognizes how fragile, some might even say miraculous, civil society is. It truly takes everyone's participation and buy-in to have a democratic society. And I'm acknowledging all this because I believe it's our role as community leaders to serve the cause of increasing participation and buy-in in democratic society. It is truly remarkable that we have the society without the level of violence that is present in other places in the world. For my COVID report, I've got a number of things that will be posted online. I'm going to speak to just 3 of them to keep it brief. Do want to acknowledge, folks have brought to my attention before that my COVID report can often be quite lengthy, and sometimes it's unclear on why I'm reporting on some of the things. I do want to clarify that I will try to do better about mentioning why it's relevant to the residents of Gulf Manor, why it should be in my mayor's report. And to that effect, we'll just say that the Ohio Association of Mayors has encouraged all mayors to do whatever they can to convey the most accurate local information about COVID to the public. The information that I report in this part of my mayor's report is provided by the Hamilton County Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency Emergency Operations Center. The 3 things that I wanted to talk about are, one, just today, just Friday, there was an update made to Governor DeWine's announcement about launch dates for vaccination of specific populations in Ohio. And so to the extent that folks in Gulf Manor have residents who have family in Hamilton County nursing homes, I want to touch on the nursing home component of this. To date, 61% of local nursing homes have been visited once by pharmacies providing vaccines through the federal government. The second round of visitations to administer the second round of doses began last week. Nursing home individuals that elected not to receive the vaccine during the first round visits will have an opportunity during this second round to change their mind and go ahead and have their first one. And so then any individuals, a third visit then will occur shortly after for any remaining second doses that need to occur. Any individuals that pass on receiving the vaccine this second time or over the course of these 3 visits will likely have to wait a while for the next opportunity to receive a vaccine. So, so there's that. I want to acknowledge the work of Gulf Manor resident Sandy Fogelson coming out of retirement to help in this effort, providing vaccines to people most in need. Nurses are heroes. I believe we have unanimous agreement on that. I'm aware of other nurses in our community besides Ms. Fogelson, who, by the way, is our councilperson Cheney's sister. I'm aware that Councilman Van Harn's wife is also a nurse, Tracy Van Harn, and former Mayor Zafiro's wife, Lisa Zafiro, are all also nurses. As we get on the other side of the pandemic, hopefully this spring, I plan to issue proclamations individually to the nurses living in Gulf Manor for their service during these unprecedented times. Please share the word of my intention to do this so that we can start to get a list of all the nurses in Gulf Manor active during the pandemic. I don't want to leave anyone out in my acknowledgement of the community's gratitude for their service. The second thing I wanted to address concerns age eligibility. This is the next phase of the vaccine rollout. Next week, folks 80 years and older will be eligible to start getting vaccinated. There's a couple of components of this I wanted to highlight. One, that the plan is that each week that age limit will decrease by 5 years. So the week after folks that are 80 years and older that are eligible, it'll be folks that are 75 years and older that are eligible. And the week after that, 70, the week after that, 65. They plan on holding it at 65 at that point. And this is when it's going to start for the 80-year-olds is the 19th of this month. Let's see, on the 14th, so this week, there'll be some updates on the coronavirusohio.gov website that will help you identify where the locations are locally in Hamilton County, where you can go to be vaccinated if you're in one of these target populations that's eligible. Also, there is let's see, this is the final thing about COVID that I wanted to bring up. And that, and as I said, there's more statistical data that is in my report that will be published on the website. But the final thing just to mention for everyone's sake here is that the Hamilton County Public Health has created an online vaccine registration survey where residents of Gulf Manor who are interested in receiving the COVID-19 vaccine when it becomes more widely available can sign up and express interest. They additionally have a mobile app that our residents can utilize that will help connect them to a local provider and tell them when it's their time to receive the vaccine. The app is called ArmorVax, spelled ARMORVAX. You can find it in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Additional details about a nationwide rollout of that app will become available as the vaccine becomes more widely available. I want to talk about implementation of the NDO. I've asked the administration to provide me with a plan for implementation of the non-discrimination ordinance that was approved by voters this past November. There have been concerns brought to my attention about how specific portions of the ordinance will be implemented. I want to make sure that I've personally heard any concerns that members of the community have, and am therefore requesting personal meetings with anyone who has concerns. I'll not be discussing these meetings publicly, but we'll be bringing specific concerns to the administration and our legal counsel in an effort to make sure that our plan, that we bring to council has addressed these concerns. So please spread the word if you hear anyone expressing a specific concern about how we're going to roll this out, to have them reach out to me so that we can address their concerns in the implementation plan. Also want to point out that it's Poverty in America Awareness Month and Martin Luther King Day next week. Martin Luther King, of course, was very concerned about poverty in America, seeing it as something compassionate and reasonable people ought to be able to unify around and searching for solutions. Poverty in America has grown with the COVID-19 pandemic. There are an estimated 55 million Americans in poverty today. That's approximately 17% of our country, or about 1 in every 5 or 6 people. And it is many people in our village. Data from the US Census Bureau monthly report shows nearly 500,000 Americans report no confidence or slight confidence in their ability to rent this month. This accounts for 28% of renters in the state. There are resource links on the Gulf Manor website and in my report here for helping loved ones, yourself, a friend or client to connect to local support. Please spread the word. I want to mention that I'm very proud of the members of our police department have taken time to reach out to folks in the community who are struggling, making sure that they get meals and other assistance to folks in need. I know there are many in our community that are helping folks, and I want them to know we're thankful for all their work. Finally, I want to say something about the federal government plans to execute 3 people this week. Carrying out federal executions during a lame duck presidency is unprecedented in modern times. Lame duck executions have not been carried out in over a century. It's been 17 years since any other president has carried out the death penalty at all. And in the past 50 years, other presidents have only carried out the death penalty 3 times. Trump administration has already executed 10 people on death row. The relevancy of this, the Gulf Manor's mayor's report, may seem a stretch for some. So here's my explanation. In my role as mayor of Gulf Manor, I've signed 3 petitions requesting clemency today, 1 for each individual scheduled to be executed this week. I am the white mayor of a predominantly Black community. Scientific analysis of the death penalties administration in the United States shows that it's disproportionately used on people of color and continues to be one of the ongoing examples of systemic racism in the United States. As the highest elected official in our community, I consider it part of my duty to acknowledge when these examples present themselves. And that is my report. So I will ask Mr. Hirth, our village administrator, for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First order of business for my report this evening is council's adoption of the proposed calendar that we've been looking at for the past couple of council meetings. As you recall, I believe there's only one holiday rescheduled, and that was for Sukkot in October, as pointed out by Mr. Kreidnoff. I have actually posted all of these dates now in the minutes page on the website, and I simply need a motion to adopt the calendar, a second, and then if there's any discussion, and then a simple voice vote from the council members if you are approving this calendar.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? I'll take that as unanimous, Mr. Hirth.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As for COVID-19 protocols, all in-person meetings continue to be virtual through the governor's curfew orders, which have now been extended through January 23rd. We continue to monitor infection and hospitalization rates as we manage our daily business. We did have another outbreak of COVID in the building last week, and folks who have become ill are doing well, although we did have some folks who were off to quarantine last week. For the most part, everybody is pretty much back in. Our new security system is now live. Everybody has gotten their new key fobs except for Mr. Knipp and Ms. Snyder. So your old fobs will not allow you to get in the building. So if you would, please schedule a time to come down. Either Anna or I can distribute those to you, but we'd like to get that done so everybody who needs access to the building can get there. Additional enhancements to that system, oddly enough, are now linked to our phone system. And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and talk about technology, which Chief Campbell was going to speak about this evening in this section. So back in 2013, 2015, the village did not have a sophisticated phone system. That being the case, there were many challenges with being able to be responsive to our residents and to collect voicemail messages and other data that we needed to manage our daily business. In 2016, the village made an investment in installing a server system that was shared by the administration, the fire department, and the police department. Those sections of the server have firewalls between them so that sensitive data would not be shared inappropriately amongst the departments. Since we have merged with the Little Miami Fire District, half of that server now becomes available. And it's fortunate that that's happened because we are laying the groundwork to do a couple of exciting things that will happen over the next 2 years. So some of the capabilities of our phone system have been realized as we've been learning to use our phones to their full capability, and we've had a need to manage the building remotely through the COVID pandemic. One of the things that we're doing that you'll see the next time you enter the building is we now have keypads with cameras at each of the doors, which will allow any visitor to communicate with office personnel to introduce themselves. We'll be able to triage folks at the door, and we'll have the ability to let people in remotely once the building opens up again for full access. One of the enhancements that we're doing is replacing all of the cameras in the building that were used for surveillance. As you come into the south parking lot door, the WeHe door, or the door at the back of the hall, every person entering will be scanned for their temperature, and that will now be once that system is up and running, that'll be something that we just do for everybody who comes in the building. And there will be protocols set forth to be able to identify anyone who does come into the building and has a fever. In addition to that, the basis for a couple of requests that we've had from the executive committee and other council members is the use of body cams for our police department. That extra server space that's available will allow us to be able to store video that is collected by the cruiser cams and by body cams. What we need, though, before that starts is a platform that allows that information to be wirelessly downloaded into our system. And that's where we are currently. We are preparing to implement a program called WatchGuard that will allow the police cars, as they're sitting in our parking lot, to attach to our data system, and any video that needs to be uploaded into the server will be done automatically. Once that program is up and running, which we believe will take 60 to 90 days to do, we will then install the next enhancements. That'll be the first step in being able to deploy body cameras. The good news about this is that through COVID funding and through some of the needs that we've seen to manage the building remotely, we are setting the platform to be able to implement body cams either in the fourth quarter of this year or the first quarter of next year. So the hope is this runs smoothly for us. We will have this system up and functioning, and then we will move forward with the body cam deployment. A couple of things that council and the finance and executive committees will need to think about as we move towards the use of body cam. That information that's collected will need to be stored. It will need to be reviewed. It will need to be archived. It will need to be redacted as necessary. It becomes a public record that the public can ask to see. That will be a challenge for our Records Commission, working with Mr. Donnellan and that committee to determine what the guidelines will be around storing that data. That being the case, one of the things that council may need to come to grips with is that we may need to hire additional help for somebody to come in and actually manage that data for us. I'll be looking towards Chief Campbell to make a recommendation on that based on best practices that have been deployed in other communities. And Andy, I think in the executive committee, you had mentioned some of the conversations you'd had with the chief about that storage. Did you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah. Well, as Ron mentioned, the one of the biggest considerations is how are we going to catalog, store, respond to record requests. I mentioned previously that in the city of Cincinnati, they have entire staff who do nothing but review that camera footage full time to catalog it, redact whatever needs to be redacted, archive it. And like I said, it's a full-time job. I know in other conversations I've had with Chief Campbell, an issue came up in the executive meeting regarding retention time. And I know that he's mentioned to me, and I don't want to speak for him, but I know in conversations we've had, he mentioned that it seems to be a little bit unclear where the law is right now, where what requirements are required of when storing, or how long you have to keep the record. So I think Chief Campbell, when he can join at the next meeting, can probably provide some clarity, as he was the former president of the local Chiefs Association. I know this is a hot topic among that group.
Thank you, Mr. Lanzer. Are there any questions about this information that I've just given you regarding security, the WatchGuard program, and then our intent to move forward with body cams, hopefully at the end of this year?
Mr. Hurd, thank you for your work on this. It's been a priority of mine that I've expressed with the executive committee over the past year, since the events with George Floyd this past spring. A couple of questions that I have is, one, around the funding for it. You and I have discussed this, but I was wondering if you can address that in terms of for the rest of the council, and answer the question of whether it's like the money that we have for this, is it in a lockbox, or what's the status of that?
I can take this one if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
The project hasn't been funded for 2021. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do the project this year. In fact, I think that we probably can, if we get a good idea of what personnel requirements are going to be required, as well as have a full scope idea of the entire technical infrastructure is beyond cameras. Once we get those questions answered, I think we can move forward. And one of the reasons why I'm confident of that is, and I'll get to it in the finance meeting at the next council meeting, is we had a pretty good year in terms of revenue generation for the village in 2020, as well as maintaining control on our appropriations. We look to have added significantly to the carryover, and I think I would be comfortable adjusting appropriations for fiscal year 2021 to ensure that this project can get done this year, assuming we have a good idea of where, what sorts of staffing requirements are required.
All right, thank you. My second question that I would like council to be able to consider is around that that ideal of best practices, acknowledging that a lot of things have been changing in the country, and that the best practices around this have consequently been evolving, and want to make sure that we're not just looking to one source for what the best practices are around this, and want to just put that out there for the council to consider.
So from a funding standpoint, the good news is that we were able to piggyback this project on a lot of the COVID technology that we've invested in. And that's a huge thing, because the largest expense of doing the body cams and the WatchGuard download program has already been covered and paid for. The biggest expense that we'll have is the per officer cost of each individual camera, which Chief Campbell has told me runs around $500 to $600 per unit, which is not that expensive. The other significant cost that we'll incur will be for whether or not we need to add an additional person to manage that data for us. But we'll figure that out. We'll have a good recommendation for council when we get to that point. This will be up to Chief Campbell to determine and to work with council on correct timing for this. And I look forward to seeing those results. Other technology upgrades that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, I just want to give you a quick update.
Excuse me, Ron. I had
Sure.
a question. I had a couple questions, but if you want me to wait, I can do that too. Just
Yeah, if you could, let me go ahead and get
Okay.
through this. The server to update our webmail, the server had missed several updates, which was a cost savings that was implemented. So Brett, our IT guy, is concurrently doing server updates over the next few weeks. Eventually, we will be up to 2021 with the server, and we'll be able to make the changes in webmail that we need to make. One of the things um, that is that's going to be important for us moving forward is the ability for Anna and Denise. Anna is our village clerk. Denise is our police clerk. They will be actually able to manage people at the doors when the building is closed. And Chief Campbell and the officers in the police squad room will have the ability to see what's going on the perimeter of the building. The other thing that's kind of cool about this, and Stefan is sitting at the moment amongst the boxes in chambers of the stuff that's being installed. There is a good possibility that we will be able to deploy cameras through a cell signal in hotspots throughout the village where we need to do monitoring. So we've talked about this for a long time, being able to monitor places where we're having problems with dumping or whatever activity needs to be monitored. This system will allow us to do that. And this all starts with our phone system that we installed back in 2016. So kind of cool stuff there. Your question, Mr. Van Harn?
yeah, I've got deer cameras that do the same thing. Just kidding. Couple things on the temperature scan for the key fobs. How does it do that? And what happens if you are detected? Do alarms go off or the door doesn't open? I'm just curious how that. Is it done, done through your thumb, or I'm just curious.
Actually, I asked for a foghorn with a light, but apparently that's not available. So it's interesting. When I walked in today, I blasted through the door very quickly and went and did my own scan and walked back to my office. And in just that instant, the camera recognized me, took my temperature, told me, told the control panel, which is at the right now at the computer where Stefan is sitting. It basically measures the temperature of faces that it sees. What we will do, and we've not determined the most tactful way to do this at this point, but there will be it's some kind of a notification system that will allow us to be able to isolate anybody who comes in with a temperature. We will still continue to ask people to sign into the building, and we're doing that for contact tracing if we need to, if there is an infection, but we're working on it. It'll be cool, and it'll be better than a foghorn with a light.
Okay. And my other question was regarding the storage of the body cameras. When you were talking about all the data, is it required that every minute is reviewed? Like after it's been uploaded, somebody has to be watching every single one, or what's the general requirement for when you say it has to be reviewed, redacted, all that stuff? How just a general picture how that looks.
So, as I think Mr. Lanzer in the previous meeting stated that the city of Cincinnati has several people who do nothing but go through that data based on what they collect, and they have hundreds of police officers.
Up to 1,000, yeah.
So for us, that is gonna we're gonna need to do whatever the best practice is from a statute standpoint, and we'll be looking to Mr. Donellan to help us make those decisions. That'll also be something that Chief Campbell will make a determination on, and he's probably the best person to talk about that right now because he has the background with what some of the other communities are doing. It's good for us that he'd had the previous experience being the president of the Chiefs Association because he's had a firsthand look in connection with a lot of the different communities who've already done this.
Yeah, I was just curious because I'm pretty sure they don't record every minute of their whole shift. So there's probably an average per officer per shift of whatever it is, 2 hours, 4, I don't know. I have no clue. But I was just trying to get a feel for what's coming down the pike. And the last thing is, I brought this up in the past with Chief Campbell. And is there, with this addition, and Mr. Donellan might understand more of the legal stuff, I've always wondered if we had the residents be able to register the fact that they have a Ring camera or something, and with the police, that in the case there is something that happens, we've had a request on a Facebook page by the police already that if something happened, they said, if you've got a camera in this area, I wonder if we had a registration, the police would be able to tap into that with permission, or I mean, I'm sure Terry would have something to say about that, but it just prompted it again. If we've got actually a storage thing, and it kind of plays into the whole community-based policing in my mind.
Before your response, Mr. Donellan, I'm aware from some of the research that I've done that there is software that's available to police departments that Amazon pushes to police departments that allows for that very thing. So I know that there is technology that allows that, and that it's out there, and that Amazon is selling it to police departments. I'm not aware of the intricacies of, is it only people who have agreed to have their cameras used, or is it everyone's camera? Or I'm not aware of all that, all those components of it, or any of the legal ramifications of it.
I know, just me personally, we don't have one, but if I did, I would be comfortable for letting the police know I have one. And in the event that something happens and they know that it was in the area of my camera, I could be contacted and give them permission, or give that honor their request. But for me, that's how I would prefer to do it. I don't necessarily want them tapped into, and I don't think it's necessary, but I was just curious about that. So,
and briefly to your previous question about the degree to which body camera is capturing everything from an officer's entire shift, we do have a little bit of insight into it because we've had cameras in the cars, and so there are protocols around that in terms of, are they always on even when the car is just sitting there and there's the officers and everybody have gone home for the night or whatever. So it's a bit of precedent there, and I'm sure that we can that Chief Campbell will be able to address those concerns. Mr. Donellan, as our solicitor, did you want to respond?
Yeah, there's a lot of evolving tech. Can everybody hear me okay? There's a lot of evolving technology out there. The Ring cameras and registering them is not unlike when businesses register their alarms with the police station. If there's an alarm drop, a fire alarm, it automatically sends a signal to the police station. So the technology is being evolved in terms of, do you have a constant ring and monitoring? Do we then start to charge for that like the monitoring companies do? Because it can be very cost intensive to have that going with people monitoring, and particularly it starts to call to mind the need to have somebody in station, because having that ring that monitors that's in a cruiser can be a distraction. So that's kind of evolving technology. The person would have to sign up and say, like an alarm drop, I want you to be my monitor. So we wouldn't automatically get everybody's, they would sign up for it. The technology is also evolving on these car cams and body cams, because the original technology relied upon the officer to initiate it. Now there's some technology out there where it's automatically initiated, because you've seen the story with many stops where, oh, I forgot to turn on my body cam. So realizing there's a desire out there to have that real-time footage, again, as these systems start to grow and they become more prevalent, that technology is going to be there for someone to trigger it, or an event to trigger it, and not rely strictly upon the officer to turn it on. Storage and retention and records production is a big issue, because if it's involving a crime, the prosecutor's office typically does not want that publicly released because it's under investigation. And that's a constant give and take with the media that we want to see it. We want to see it right now. Trying to catalog it, you know, if it's on for every event, you're going to rely upon the officer to tell you what that event was. Somebody's going to catalog it. They could say it's a very benign encounter for a traffic stop. And then how long do you store it? Till it's administratively no longer valued, till a ticket's been issued. If it involves an issue where there could be a lawsuit, you would want to be able to reserve that and keep that for a longer period of time. With a lawsuit also, you can get one of my colleagues sending an immediate request to the community saying, I want you to preserve this record for litigation. So a lot's going to be going on in this field as more and more communities start to pick up the technology and as society demands this technology in all departments. But I'm going to piggyback real quickly. It was in the news Saturday night very briefly. You may not have caught it, but I watched about a 20-minute, very moving video cam today from one of my Montgomery police officers. Real quick, earlier in the evening, he had stopped a lady on the side of the road with a flat tire and helped her change her tire. She said she was going to a family gathering in Deerfield. 2 hours later, the family called Montgomery police and said, hey, what happened? She never showed up. He put out an all points bulletin. Someone spotted a car off the road behind a church off Fields Erdel. They could see the lights on in the woods. They went up. The woman had gone into a diabetic coma. She had crashed her car. She had crashed her car against a tree. She was passed out with her foot on the accelerator with the car still operating. So the wheels are spinning. It's pinned against a tree. This officer heard where the location was en route with his camera on to be able to identify her. When he got there and approached the car, gasoline was leaking and the car started to go up in flames. He rescued her. Said, it's really moving. This guy suffered burns on his hands, burns on his face, burns on his head, but you can hear him calling out to her, trying to help her get loose from the car. He had to shoot out the windows of the car to get inside, get her car door opened up. Then he had to have somebody else go in and reach across, undo her safety belt. Then she was clinging to the safety belt and he pulled her out. And in the end, the video, it shows this car completely engulfed. And you can hear this guy talking, how just the adrenaline in him. But he didn't want to leave the scene until he knew she was safe, even though they're saying to him, you need to go to the hospital. And one guy said, I'd shake your hand, but I can see they're burned. So police using video cams are not always bad events. This is a capture of a hero in action.
Wow.
So thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple more items here. Auction items. I think I sent an email out a couple of weeks ago that the chairs, the former chairs in council, had been listed for $90 as a unit. They have not sold. We did reduce them one more time. They are now on sale for $50. Catch them while they're hot. But after that, if they do not sell, I'll be coming back to council at the next meeting to zero those out in cost, and we will dispose of them. I would prefer, rather than tossing them in the dumpster, to be able to try and donate them. I didn't hear back from anybody. If you knew anywhere that we could donate them, but if you hear of something, let me know. The other item that we have zeroed out in value is the old lectern, the poor old tired lectern. That one, I'm advising council this evening that has zero value, and our intent is to dispose of it. Mr. Donald, I don't know if council wants to affirm that or what action they need to take.
Probably a motion to affirm the disposition of that property, including salvaging out or disposing of what we consider to be trash, would be appropriate to document for the auditor.
So can we get a motion and a second and a voice vote?
Motion
is a-
to that movement.
Second? All those in favor? I see everyone's hand. I take that as unanimous, Mr. Hirth. I'd also point out that a number of small nonprofits, I'm familiar with one very personally. I'm not interested in the chairs, but Habitat for Humanity's Restore can be, I think people are familiar with it. It might be a good place if we're allowed to donate to, and if they're interested. That might be a good place to look for some of these items. We allowed to do that, Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, I think in our salvage ordinance, it says that items could be auctioned off through the internet auction. Items that are determined to be non-salvageable can be donated, and then things can also be trashed. So this would enable us, it's charities that serve the community. So if we find that there's no one out there that wants to buy the lovely shoe store chairs, and Restore is willing to take the orphan chairs, we could deliver them over to Restore.
Great, thank you. I'm going to wrap this up quickly with the Vera corridor road project. I gave more detail in the executive committee. What I'll say for this meeting is that we expect the bids to go out for the project sometime in February. I will probably come to council the second council meeting in February to approve the contract to move forward with the project, and we're looking towards a March 15 start date. It will probably be a 6-month-long project, first starting with the water main, and then the curbs, and then the asphalt. And this will be the entire length of Vera Avenue, Elbrook from Losanaville to the Corporation line at Amberley, and then the entire Western Service Drive. Finally, this evening, and in your council packet under the executive committee, I had posted the code enforcement official job description. This position is going to be huge in moving us to the next level of improving our property maintenance and our building code enforcement programs. What the position is intended to do is to build on the work that Detective Matthews has done so remarkably on a part-time basis over the last 3 years, I believe it's been, if not 4. And I would foresee this position possibly becoming full-time in the future because it would also manage whatever we do with landlord licensing, our relationship with our landlords, doing property maintenance inspections, actually proactively looking for building code violations. Some of the things that are in our building code that we've not enforced for a long, long time. I asked the executive committee this evening to endorse moving this to the finance committee. My intent would be that on the January 25th finance committee, I will propose a salary for the position, and then hopefully we'll get approval to move forward, and then we will post the position directly thereafter. My goal is to have the position filled by the 1st of March, which will allow us to hit the ground running in the spring season after whoever fills the position has the ability to get some training and work with our partners in Hamilton County. Any questions about any of that?
Mr. Hirth and I had spoke individually about, and I wanted to reiterate and make sure that everyone was aware that I wasn't joking concerning this, but the abbreviation for code enforcement officer in some of the stuff that was written up was CEO of Gulf Manor. I wanted to make sure that in our official documents that is stricken, that we're not using the abbreviation of CEO. of Gulf Manor. I don't want to have to fact check anyone's resume down the road concerning that. And I'm not kidding. That's all.
Duly noted and done. All right, Mr. Mayor, that would be the end of my report for this evening.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hirth. Mr. Lanzer, do you have a fiscal report?
Yeah, the only item tonight is to make you all aware that we will be doing a supplemental reappropriation already. What the issue is the county has extended the deadline for municipalities to return to them any unused CARES Act funding. That extension has been granted, I believe, through the end of this month, and we had a little bit left over. Because when creating the appropriations for 2021, I was under the understanding that the deadline would be December 31st of 20. None of those funds were appropriated into the 2021 appropriations. So tonight we are adding them to our appropriations. I need council to approve it.
Good. Do we have a motion for approval?
We'll do it as part of the legislation.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
And I will have a full finance report ready to go at the next council meeting, during the finance meeting, and then again at the council meeting after that.
Thank you, Mr. Lanzer. Is that the end of your report?
End of report.
Okay. Chief Campbell is not available this evening. I believe we've already covered that. I do have a copy, and I believe each of you also have a copy of the monthly mayor's court report. I'm going to speak to that a bit here. So the total to the city was $66,686.11. Total to the state was $16,323.50. Total to other was $786, and the total revenue was $83,795.61. And that's usually how he ends his report. If you recall, I've asked, and he's begun to do this, to give a breakdown. It's not currently in this report, but a breakdown in a separate report of what's going on in our mayor's court. A breakdown of the different kinds of ticketing that's going on, both in terms of so we can see what's going on with parking, what's going on with traffic stops, and what's going on with the other things that mayor's court deals with. Mr. Donnellan, are we able to call for a motion to accept the mayor's court report in the absence of the chief?
Yes, we have the written report. We would accept it into the record, and it breaks it down by current period, so just the month of December. It also breaks it down by our year to date and gives our comparison analysis for last year to date. So be a motion to accept the report and then a voice vote.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting here, but those are not the numbers for the current period for December. I think you read the last year-to-date numbers on that sheet. So it would be the current period.
I apologize. I will reread that. I apologize. I was thinking, well, it says right here, it's the date of the report was 1/6/2021, but you're right. I did not notice. I'm not used to reading this report, obviously, out loud. I'm used to hearing it. I read the last year to date. The current period for total to the city was $1,842. Total to the state was $291.50. Total to other $7.50 for a total of $2,141. And year to date is $38,297.89 in total revenue. And compared to last year's to date, there's that difference. It was $83,795.61. Is there a motion to accept the report to the record?
Motion to accept the mayor's court report.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? I take that as unanimous. Thank you. And Mr. Lanzer, it's time for our second call for quorum. Would you do the honors of that?
Mr. Batcher. Ms. Cheney.
Here.
Mr. Knipp.
Here.
Mr. Pridnoff. Ms. Snyder.
Here.
And Mr. Van Horn.
Present.
All members except for Mr. Pridnoff are present.
Thank you. Mr. Donnellan, our solicitor's report.
Thank you. I have two pieces of legislation for this evening. First is ordinance number 2021-1. As Mr. Lanzer pointed out, this is an ordinance to amend our appropriations for fiscal year 2021 based upon the additional deadline that we were given for expending COVID funds. So we need a motion to read this by title only.
Motion to read by title only.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This is ordinance 2021-1, an ordinance to amend appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the Village of Gulf Manor for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2021. And I need a motion to approve. A second. Any questions or discussions? And then a roll call vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Donnellan?
All right.
Are we
Mr.
ready
Batcher.
for a roll call?
Yes.
Ms. Cheney.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Mr. Knipp.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Van Horn.
Yes.
And this ordinance will take effect immediately as an appropriation ordinance without it being passed as an emergency. But we do need to have a motion to suspend the second and third readings and then a roll call vote on that motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Mr. Batcher.
Yes.
Ms. Cheney.
Yes.
Mr. Knipp.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Van Horn.
Yes.
Thank you. The second piece of legislation is resolution number 2021-1. This is a typical housekeeping measure every January, which is a resolution authorized by statute to allow Mr. Hirth or Mr. Lanzer periodically to request advance payments from the auditor for tax collections during the year. They cannot do this without us having this resolution passed and presented to the auditor's office. So I'd ask for a motion to read this by title only.
Motion to read by title.
Second.
Roll or all those in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor. I believe I've seen everyone's hand. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a resolution requesting the county auditor to make tax advances during the year 2021 pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 321-34. I need a motion, a second, any questions or discussion, and then a roll call vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? Yeah, roll, please.
Mr. Batcher.
Yes.
Ms. Cheney.
Yes.
Mr. Knipp.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Van Horn.
Yes.
And then finally, as noted on the agenda, we will be requesting an executive session to discuss matters of personnel compensation. And I hope it will be brief.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We can make the motion at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I apologize. I jumped the gun there.
I take it back.
Need to ask Ms. Snyder as chair of the, was that the end of your report?
Yes, thank
Mr.
you.
Donovan? Okay, thank you. Ms. Snyder, do you have a report for the executive committee that met this evening?
I do. As Mr. Hirth had noted, the executive committee endorsed moving the code enforcement official position to Finance Committee. We received the same report regarding police technology for the eventual purchase of body cams, which we are all very excited about. And we also received a history of garbage disposal and pickup in our former contracts in the village in preparation for negotiating our new contract for 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Are there any questions? And well, first off, is that the end of your report? All right. Are there any questions? Ms. Cheney, is there an education report?
Just real quick, PRM LSDMC meets this Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And also report that Nativity Schools PTA is holding their 34th annual spaghetti dinner. And it's going to be curbside pickup only. It's January 30th. It runs from 3 to 6 p.m. And you can buy a family meal kit, which includes 8 meatballs with sauce, a box of spaghetti with bread for $20. You can buy additional 8 meatballs for $12. You can get additional 16-ounce jar of sauce for $5. And you can buy a raffle ticket for $1 to win an entire family meal. I have the link. If anybody's interested, I can send it to you so you can pre-order it. I ordered today from it, so I know it's working, but I will tell you, I struggled a little bit with the payment end. It wasn't easy to use, but I finally figured it out. So anyway, that's all I have, unless Roger wants to add something else for Nativity. I couldn't find anything, and I'm not getting the report from Nativity, but it might be because of the holidays.
I did send, I wasn't sure if you're getting the email. I did forward it to you a day or two ago from the principal, and it had the COVID numbers in it.
Okay.
I can find it real quick, or we could just let that go for now. But they're reporting those on a regular basis from the principal.
Okay. I didn't see it, but I can look again.
Okay. I think I may have sent it to your personal email. So
Yeah.
that's maybe why.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cheney. I've got a couple COVID-related things. I'm thinking may be helpful just in terms of as leaders in a community that has students in schools, that this may be information that you could help pass along. The school personnel will, so in the rollout of the vaccine, basically they're saying that school personnel will only be included if their school has reported that they will be back in person by March 1st. Otherwise, the school personnel will not be included in the vaccines. That information has come out here recently. There's so the state has started sending out questionnaires to the schools about that. And Governor DeWine recently, I know this affected the school that our kids go to, the definition of exposure to COVID-19 in the classroom has changed with regard to who is required to quarantine. They've opened it up a little more, made it a little more lax, given that all the schools that I'm aware of and their understanding is that the rules that they have for everyone wearing masks and sitting 6 feet apart and everything in the classroom, in the schools that are meeting, that if someone is found to have COVID, that everyone in the classroom isn't going to be required to quarantine when that happens, given that so long as those protocols were in place in the school. So that's a recent change that's happened in schools that parents and I'm sure the school folks are aware of. But that's all that I had to add in to the report. Thank you for your report, Ms. Cheney. Thank you for both of your work. Did you have a further statement?
Quick comment. I did hear that Walnut Hills has decided not to go in person the rest of the year. So that
Okay.
may be a insight for the rest of public schools. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But
Okay.
secondly, you mentioned before how they're going to be going 5 years down, but the lowest age I've heard is the vaccine's good for 16 and up. Is there any indication or hints? I haven't heard anything about the possibility of children's vaccine being available, or are they hoping the timing works out the same way?
Right. Yeah. So what I've heard from several different sources in answer to this. All right. One is that the statement that I made about the lowest age that they were going to as far as 65 was going to be in terms of phase B, where they're rolling it out to elderly individuals. It's not saying that they're not going to make it available to anybody else. That's just, they have different phases in terms of when the vaccine becomes available, who they're making sure gets it first. All right. In this next phase after nursing homes is going to be elderly folks that are out in the community by age down to 65. The other piece I've heard in this addresses part of your question, maybe about younger folks getting it, and that is I've had some doctors who have reported that. Actually, I'm going to roll back my statement on this because I don't want to misstate it. But my understanding is that more information will become available as more vaccine becomes available and it's rolling out. Like, for instance, with the teachers, I believe that's, I can look it up. It'll be in my report at what phase teachers are going to be the targeted population. But again, they'll prioritize the teachers that are meeting in person with kids, and other teachers won't have the priority at that time. Does that answer your questions?
I was just curious if you heard anything about when they hope the children, either there's a vaccine available or when they will be. I know that's a pretty broad question, but part of me feels like they haven't really developed one that's safe enough for I think there's an age restriction of 16 and up right now. So they won't be getting it at this point based on what's been approved. And if so, if there's been any hint of when they hope to have that available. If you don't know, that's fine. I'm just curious if you heard anything.
Yeah, I don't know. There is a statement here about, I'm looking for it in my report, part of the part that I did not read, which was specific to folks that have disabilities and congenital problems. And I'm trying to find that in here. As we move on, I'll look for it and I'll attempt to answer your question by the end of our meeting tonight about that. What I was going to say is I know some doctors for folks that have pre-existing conditions, doctors that have specialized in the pre-existing conditions have said we can't recommend that you get the vaccine. Doesn't mean that it necessarily would hurt you. It's that we just think you have to make your own choice on it, because in some cases we've seen, with even with just the elevated temperature, that's normal, that sometimes that can affect people that already have something going on. So the fact that they're not recommending it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have it. It's just that they're saying we can't officially recommend it for certain populations. And with that, I will move on to our nonprofit report won't be given with Mr. Pridenoff off today. How about the Fire District Board member report? Is there one of those, Mr. Lanzer or Mr. Van Harn?
The only announcement I have is that the next board meeting will be a virtual meeting. It'll be Wednesday, January 20th of 2021 at 6 p.m. I believe the link to join in on the meeting will be made available on the village website. And I welcome, as always, council as well as any residents who will watch this to join in and see what's going on with their fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Lanzer. Any additional comments?
Andy, can I add to that real quick that there are two ways that you can participate in that meeting. ICRCTV.com is the community video system that Fairfax is a part of. So if you go to the Fairfax page, you can just watch the meeting. And we've also started listing the Zoom contact meeting, so you can actually go in and participate if you wish to.
Andy, I can't remember. I think, was it the last meeting it was announced that we did finally get an inventory, at least a 99% or something like that?
Yeah, so
can't remember if
right.
that was reported yet. So
yeah, so the inventories of both firehouses have been completed. Now we're in the next phase, and that phase is placing a valuation on the assets listed on those inventories. I am going to begin doing the valuation of the assets starting tomorrow at Station 47. I'll be working with Lieutenant McGinnis of the station at Station 47, and we're going to be going through all the turnout gear and PPE equipment and sifting through that. On Wednesday, I'm scheduled to work with our IT technician to go through all of the technical pieces of equipment at Station 47, and again, there's quite a bit of that. The rest of it should be fairly easy to do because it's essentially at that point vehicles, and we're going to use a straight line depreciation approach on those to come up with value. So the goal with the valuation, I met with Lieutenant Thompson. He's at Station 66. He's responsible for the valuation of the assets over at the other firehouse. We have a deadline, self-imposed deadline, to have a working document ready to go for submission of January 20th, just in time for the next board meeting. My goal is to have Station 47's valuations to Lieutenant Thompson no later than January 18th to give him ample opportunity to review what I've done. And I've requested that he get his work to me by January 18th. So on January 20th, we have a somewhat finished, agreed upon document to proceed upon.
Thank you, Mr. Lanzer.
Yep.
Any other questions? I will move on to Planning Commission in just one moment. I found that spot, Mr. Van Harn, that says that while the state reports that vaccine will become available to individuals with congenital, developmental, or early onset medical disorders on the 25th of this month, the state has not yet announced the details regarding the rollout to this population. That's the closest comment to answer your question that I've got out of the emergency management.
thank you.
Mr. Betcher, finance report. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Planning Commission report.
I was gonna say, you're gonna
Mr.
skip the best part of the night. Planning Commission did meet last Monday, had a very in-depth discussion regarding little libraries, moving towards instead of a case-by-case, variance request for little libraries, creating an actual code around them. So meeting again first Monday in February to continue that conversation and get those going in the village, hopefully easily and quickly into the spring. Also a proposed building modification to 2700 Lasanaville to accommodate a new business, which is the, I think, Cuisine East West building on Lasanaville.
So if I can add to that, well, I have posted under the administration tab, there is a link to upcoming hearings for the Planning Commission. The February 1st meeting is actually going to be a public hearing on both of those issues. Mr. Donnell and I have not talked. The letters went out to the property owners within the appropriate space from 2700 Lasanaville. And then anybody who wishes to speak in favor or against either of those issues will have the ability to do that. It'll be the same procedure that we use for a council meeting. There will be a link from our homepage that people can join that meeting that night.
I'm sorry, where was that posted again on the website? Is that,
It's under the administration tab.
okay, thank you.
So it's the green tab, and then it'll be on the right-hand column.
And old school, we're still required to put a notice in the Cincinnati Enquirer, so we'll put a joint notice in, releasing it to the Enquirer by the end of next week to let them know what information we have available that they can obtain through the village administrator's office.
Very good, thank you. Anything else with Planning Commission? All
Not
right,
today. Thank you.
Mr. Knepp, is there a community engagement report?
Not tonight.
Very good. Back to you, Mr. Betcher, with a Finance Committee.
No report.
Anything? All right. Let's see. I can make a couple announcements before I ask for a motion for executive session. Our next council meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 25th, 2021, 7 p.m. Next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 25th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Next Finance Committee meetings, that was stated twice. Future scheduled dates for council are February 8th at 7 p.m. and February 22nd at 7 p.m. And that's it. If you are watching and you're wondering what's happening next, I'm going to be asking for a motion to go to executive session for matters of personnel and compensation. And what that's going to look like to anyone viewing this is basically that we've all disappeared. We will come back to adjourn the meeting, but no need for you to wait around, I suppose. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is
Second.
there a second? And I believe we need to make a roll call for this.
Correct. That's a motion to adjourn to executive session for matters of personnel compensation and what we call a roll call vote. And we'll come back into regular session and adjourn.
All right. And Mr. Batcher,
Yes.
Ms. Cheney,
Yes.
Mr. Knipp,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Van Horn.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to take us all over to a breakout room. So I'll see you on the other side here.
He just left us all. Said ha ha.
There we go. Join.